Good morning. Welcome to Jericho Friends Meeting for worship. Today is the 18th day of the first month of 2026. See you inside.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Still got some visiting going on there. Thanks everyone for braving the cold. A little bit of snow this morning. Great to have Sid with our back. Let me just start by saying I wish I was as organized as Casey. It's January 18th and I already got my Valentine's. She's on. So, as this goes on, and I've been doing these call to worships, I really do enjoy it. I do a little bit of research, sometimes in advance, sometimes Sunday morning. I came across something this morning that I really felt was just enough for me to read. It's titled The God of All, and I hope you enjoy it and it prepares your heart for this time of worship. Our God is the God of all, the God of heaven and earth, of the sea and of the rivers, the God of the sun and of the moon and of all the stars, the God of the lofty mountains and of the lowly valleys. He has his dwelling around heaven and earth and sea and all that is in them. He inspires all. He gives life to all. He dominates all. He supports all. He lights the light of the sun. He furnishes the light of the night. He has made springs in dry land. He is the God of heaven and earth, of sea and rivers, of sun, moon, and stars. He is the God of the lofty mountain and the lowly valley, the God above heaven and in heaven and under heaven. Let us pray before we begin our worship today. Lord, be with us this day. Be within us to purify us. Be above us to draw us up. Beneath us to sustain us. Before us to lead us. Behind us to restrain us. And around us to protect us. For you are the God of all. Amen.
So I don't know if some of you knew Bob Curry, but he was our vice president at the Pregnancy Care Center, the Pregnancy Decision Resources, for a really long time. And he would always say, as long as the president showed up, vice president really easy, he didn't have to do anything. So when he passed and they asked me if I'd be vice president, I was like, sure, I've always said it was easy. Well, guess who didn't show up to last month's meeting? Our president. So I got to play president for a minute. But I hope that all of you have heard about our latest endeavors at the Pregnancy Decision Resources, because if not, that means I haven't done my job. But we are working on bringing ultrasounds to our center. And we've been asked several times, why is this important? We have some people who are like, can't they just go to our local hospital and get an ultrasound? The short answer to that is yes, but the longer answer is it costs, obviously, to go there and get one, as well as we don't know what the conversation would be like if there was any conversation to go get an ultrasound at the hospital. If we had ultrasound at our center, we would be able to control that narrative a little bit more. Also, our center right now does a fantastic job of providing resources for parents, people who already have children, getting them supplies, parenting classes. But where I think we are really struggling is getting abortion-minded people into our center. If you look at it from their point of view, they really don't have much reason to come into our center. If we're being honest with ourselves and looking at everything, if they, are pretty determined that that's what they're going to choose, they don't want to come in and talk to you, right? They don't want to come in and listen to you talk about getting baby butts or diapers, because in their mind they don't need those, right? So that's another reason why we're looking for ultrasound, is to hopefully get some of those abortion-minded women into our center, so then we can at least have that dialogue with them, and they can know more decisions that they have besides just what they think is their only decision. Some scary statistics that I want to share with you a little bit too, is that we are fortunate to live in a very good state as far as that goes. Indiana is very conservative, very non-abortion with the laws and everything like that. However, we're very close to Ohio, so you can drive an hour away and go to any of those clinics. But the scary thing is, anybody with one of these is now a click away from getting a procedure. And the scary thing is, medical abortions, or medication abortions now account for 63% of the abortions that are performed, and that doesn't include self-managed medication abortions. So you can go on a website and order pills to be delivered to your house in 1 to 3 days, not even see a doctor, not even take a test or anything. And so that's kind of what we're facing now. And I had the pleasure of attending the National CareNet conference last year. I learned so much, had a fantastic time, but learned a lot about these things. And a lot of what is being told to us about the numbers of abortions and stuff are very low, because there are a lot of people utilizing those resources. There are a lot of people who are ordering from other countries even. And if you stop and ask yourself, like, would I go overseas or out of the country to get a medical procedure? Probably not, right? That's not really deemed as safe. And a lot of these, one of the things that I learned is that now there's not a connection with that baby, but there's also not even a connection now with being pregnant. So that takes all of that away, just a click on your cell phone. So getting ultrasound into our center and getting those people into our center to see them is very, very, very important. I know those are kind of scary and daunting things to talk about, but it's the truth of what we're seeing and what we're facing. We are right now have a very good task force, medical conversion task force, looking at getting everything that we need done in order to make this happen. We have a doctor, Dr. Tina Wrigley from Richmond, who's phenomenal, and I can't say enough good things about her. She does the abortion pill reversal. She's one of the very few around this area that does that. And she's been very hands-on with us. She would be our overseeing doctor for the ultrasounds. And right now we are in the process of raising money to renovate our building. There are certain things that need to happen. We only have one restroom in there, and to have an ultrasound requires 2. That way one is just for the pregnancy test and the ultrasound area. And so we're trying to keep as much of it the same as we can, but obviously we need to renovate some of it. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now. We've applied for a lot of grants to cover the ultrasound machine itself and the exam tables. And we are looking towards hiring a nurse manager, which would be a lot of our cost. And there are grants for that kind of thing too. So we're looking at grants in all avenues of everything. We've done a lot with NIFLA, which is a lot of law stuff. So luckily we have some lawyers that have looked at that and helped us out with that. We are also always looking for volunteers at the center. So if you guys think you might want to volunteer or know somebody who would, we would greatly appreciate that. And we did just welcome a new member to our board, but we are looking for another member. Our lone male on the board would love another male to be on the board with us. And then I will have baby bottles for you next Sunday. Someone, probably me, forgot to pick them up on Thursday. So I will have those for you next Sunday. And I just want to leave you with this that I learned at conference was our CEO talked a lot about pro-life versus pro-abundant life. And he said pro-life leads you to the polls and the politics and all of that. Pro-abundant life leads us to the cross. And that's what we're looking to do, is have pro-abundant life where we care about that baby from the very first DNA all the way to adulthood and beyond when they become parents too. So I will leave you with that, and thank you for letting me stand up here and talk to you. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to come with you answer them. Thank you.
Here, come in. You're good. Come on.
Man, that's great. I want to pray for you. Lord, I'm very grateful for Pam being willing to inform us of what's going on, to preserve babies, to preserve souls, to preserve people in the future. I'm very grateful for that. I ask the Lord that you encourage her, encourage the other people that she's working with, that you help provide them with all of the equipment, finances that they need to be sufficient to accomplish your purposes as well. I also ask that you help speak through me this morning the words you have spoken. I ask in these things in Amen. I'm deciding that we do not live in what I call the society of getting the things that we need at the time. And my explanation for this is we grew up approximately 20, 25 miles from the grocery store. And so whenever we would be going to town, Barb had a list. She always had a list. It was an ongoing list. It was on the refrigerator or in her pocket. So when I'd step in the door and say, I'm going to town with Barb, she'd say yes. Because she didn't get to go to town that often. And I would drop her at the grocery store and go and get what I needed and come back, and she'd be waiting and we'd go back home. And so we had what I call an economy of making sure we used our time wisely, because it cost money to go to town. And we wanted to make sure we had everything we needed at that time. And she always had that list and filled the list. And the thing that was interesting about Barb and her list is there wasn't anything on it that I wanted. You know, like cookies, ice cream, all the good stuff. And she was always making sure that she had what she needed at home. And I'm noticing that our economy has changed in the last few years. It has turned into what I call the attention economy, and you don't have to go to town for it. It comes to your home. It comes in your home on the TV, on your internet. It's all this stuff. And in this attention economy, they want you to agree and take and afford what they think you should have. And most of the times I see anything on the attention economy on my internet, I'm just, I don't want that. So here's the thing about the attention economy. You have to work to find what is not fake. Are you understand that? You have to work with finding what is not fake, because the majority of the stuff you see on what I call the attention economy is not truth. You have to sort through it to find it accurately and be able to understand completely what it is. Sherlock Holmes, in one of the books that I read about him, and by the way, Sherlock Holmes is a fictional character, so don't think that he actually said this, but this is what he said in the books. He said, what you have to do is eliminate the improbable in order to find the truth. So if you want to find out what the truth is and find out what is fake, start eliminating what you think might be improbable in this economy that you have assailing you. And when you start figuring out that this is fake and this is fake and this is fake, then you can start saying, Now, I'm seeing what is the truth, and I can find out what I need to be working on and focusing on. So here's where I want to go with this today, is you need to have what I call the step back. And I see that as being stewardship. And the reason I look at stewardship is because I grew up with a man that was a conservationist and very much a steward of the soil. Dad was one of those guys that if you were working the ground up and down a hill, he would stop you and say, don't do that. And I'd say, why not? He said, because watch this. And he'd either do something to make me understand how this dirt would be going down the road and it would be gone. And he said, you will not work on this land up and down. You will do it around the hill. You will do it this way. And he would put waterways in that would control how the water would be going through there. And he was very much intent about saving soil. And one of the things he said was, once that soil is gone, you're going to have to pick us up time getting it back. And rarely will you get it. And so I learned from Dad to be a conservationist and be watching where the soil was going. Just kind of give you an example of how dramatic Dad was about it. A few years ago, we went back to visit. And the next morning, Dad said, come on, let's go for a drive. Now, there had been a real heavy rain. It was spring. Guys that worked the ground. There was guys that plowed. There was guys that chiseled. There was guys that disced. There was guys that field cultivated or ran a cultivator. There was guys that no-tilled. And Dad said, let's go for a drive. We went up over one of these rises. It was kind of down on the low side of the hill. He said, look at that. He stopped. He said, look at that. Just look at that. I mean, I thought he was going to cry. I honestly did, because in this heavy rain, all of this black dirt had run down up against the fences and filled the ditch with black dirt. And it had gone down the ditch and across the road, and he was just going, what are they thinking? That's how dramatic it was to him. And I was starting to think about that, and we drove over to another place, and we went across the Crooked Bridge. Don't ask me about that. And the Crooked Bridge went across Mud Creek. Well, usually on a rain that happened like that, the creek would be brown. That morning, the creek was black. The water was black all over that bridge. Then we drove to another location, and he said, there's something wrong here. The farmer that used to farm this ground had put waterways in, and the next guy came in and chiseled through everything. And that rain had washed down those hills, and Dad was going, I'm glad he's not within reach. I think I'd say something to him. And I've thought about this attention economy that we have and stewardship of the soil. And I've been beginning lately to translate that into stewardship of the soul. Have you thought about the idea of protecting your soul from erosion? The things that come in and wash away the things that you want to save and protect. And erosion happens in many different ways. It can happen from rain, it can happen from wind, it can happen from compaction, it can happen from you working the ground too much, it can happen, all different kinds of different things that will contaminate or take the energy, the feed processing away from your soul. And so I started looking at some of this thing, and I agree with what Dad said, is when it's gone, you're going to have dickens of a time getting it back. And so when you want to start thinking about your soul, you want to work on preserving it, protecting it. And I've even stretched that to just one different thing here. If you can't protect your soul, how can you protect someone else's? You must start having stewardship of your soul. And you start working on that in different ways. And you have to start looking at it before it starts to erode. You don't wait for the erosion to start working. You don't wait for the work in the ground up and all the wind and the rain and all the other different things that take your soul away. You start working on it before, not after. It's kind of hard to put it back once it's pulled off. So I started looking at some of these things as far as stewardship is concerned. And I have determined this, that when you look through the Bible, almost every circumstance that you look at, every different thing you find Jesus working in, he is working on stewardship. And it's not just stewardship of your soul, it's the stewardship of people. So when you look at when you look at some of these things that Jesus is talking about, you will find that almost every time he will point at what it is about people and what it is our relationship is to them. And he pulls these things out. In Luke chapter 9, verses 12 through 17, it's where the people have been there. There's about 5,000 people there, and they've been there all day. And Jesus has been talking to them and ministering to them. And the 12 disciples come along and say, hey, Jesus, it's time for you to send away. We don't have enough food to feed them, and it's a long ways to the next town. We need to send them away. And Jesus looks at them and says, you feed them. Did you see the connection there? It was the people that Jesus was concerned about. It wasn't whether he was concerned about the disciples or not. He was concerned about the people who were there, and he'd been ministering to them. And he says, you feed them. And they said, wait a minute. We only have, okay, my memory's gone. How many sheep? Okay, 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish. We don't have enough. Jesus said, you feed them. And here's the thing I look about as far as stewardship is concerned. How many times do you think you don't have enough? You don't have enough to feed more people. You don't have enough to pay the bills. You don't have enough to do this. But Jesus said, look at what it's for, and you're going to be feeding people. And so they pass the bread out, and they pass the fish out, and they get a whole bunch more back afterwards. 12 baskets, I think it was. And what I'm looking at here is that we miss the opportunity of people focusing, instead of focusing on what we have, instead of what can be. And Jesus is saying, feed the people. Don't worry about what you have or don't have. They were wanting to make sure they had their lunch. And how many times do we get busy about people? We want to make sure we have our lunch instead of being concerned about the people as Jesus is. So many times we say, we don't have enough. We don't have enough. We can't do this. We can't do that. And stewardship of people makes a totally different attitude towards what you're going to be doing. The next one is in Joshua chapter 1. This one's almost comical in some ways. It begins by saying, God's talking to Joshua. And he goes to Joshua and he says, Moses, my servant, isn't dead. They didn't know it. Moses had wandered off, gone up the mountain, and he hadn't come back. And so there have been people out looking for him, and they can't find him. And God announces Moses is dead. Now, I want you to move on. I want you to move on to the next thing. I have this land I want you to have. It's for the Israelites. It's for the people. It's not for Moses. It's not for Joshua. I have given you this people. All the land you step across to, you're going to possess. It's for the people. I want you to move, Joshua. I want you to take these people. Then it gets into verse 6, verse 5. No one will be able to stand up against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. End of verse 5. I'm going to do this for you. And then the next thing is, verse 6. This is the one that takes you to the stewardship. Verse 6 is this. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their forefathers to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. It goes on down there in verse 9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Oh, here's what the picture is, folks. Up to this point, up to the end of verse 5, God is saying, you get to have this. But if you want it, you've got to do this. If you want it, you better take it as a stewardship account. You better start saying, it's time to step back and look at what we have. Step back is what I call stewardship. You step back and you look at it and you analyze it. God said you can have this, but if you want it, you have to do this. If you want to have this property, if you want to have this work in the future, if you want to have this for the Israelites, Joshua, there's something you have to do. And the people are doing it. If you want this, you must be strong, you must be courageous. That means you step up and you do it. That's the problem with stewardship, folks. It's the doing of it. Stewardship is one of the things that I think Jesus has given us to look at and say, the most important thing I have is to look at the people. Because this is who God's people are. We're going to be careful about who they are and look at who we're going to take care of them. The next thing is, in Matthew chapter 16, Jesus has the disciples, they've been out looking after people again, and he pulls them aside, and then he does this with them. Who do the people say I am? So Jesus brought out the people in Matthew chapter 16. He says, who do the people say I am? And those guys started thinking. And they said, well, some of them say you're John the Baptist. Some of them say you're Elijah. Some of them say you're a prophet. Some of them say, and so these guys were listening to the people, but they were hearing what they were saying about who Jesus was. And then he looks at Jesus. Jesus looks at his disciples, and here is the greatest stewardship lesson you can have if you want more. Because he says, who do you say I am? Who do you say I am? And I'm getting this picture when I was working on this up. 12 guys. Who do you say I am? Well, let's see. Oh, we just like anybody. No. Peter says, you're the Christ. You're the Son of the living God. And she says, okay. In the Bible, I don't think Jesus danced, but I see him dancing here. Okay? I see him, all right, you got it, guys. And he says, blessed are you, son of Bar-Jonah, son of... And he said, you're going to have the keys of heaven, and what you lock up in heaven is going to be locked up in heaven. What you lock up on earth is going to be locked, and what you release in heaven, and what you release on earth. I don't know. What would you go, and what would you do if you were answering that question and you were all sitting there going, yeah, you're the Son of the living God. You're the Messiah. You're the Christ. And he says, you finally are getting the picture. It's all about stewardship. This is a stewardship. It's a stewardship of people. Because Jesus said, whatever you lock up in heaven, what would you lock up in heaven? You've been given the keys to the kingdom of heaven. What would you lock up in heaven? As Jesus says, who or what or why would you lock up something in heaven? Who would you lock up? Who would you release in heaven? Who would you lock up on earth? Who would you release in earth? Now, I have some ideas. There's some people that care deeply about how to release them in heaven. And then before they're released in heaven, I'd lock them up in heaven too. And on earth, do you know who I'd lock up on earth? Satan. I would lock him up in the tightest place I could lock him up. And I wouldn't, and at that point, I'd bury the key somewhere. Now, here's my idea of stewardship, was having the keys to the kingdom of heaven and all on earth. You can take whatever it is that is pulling things away from your soul. You can take whatever it is that you are agreeing to come into your life, those fake things, and you can search for the truth and say, Lord, show me the truth for my soul. I want to practice the spirit of truth to protect my soul from this erosion, this contamination, these things that come along, the wind, the rain, compaction, all of the tillage practices that have been stirring my soul and diminishing it. Make my soul whole, complete, one with you. The stewardship of life. The stewardship of people, the stewardship of caring about what Jesus cares about. In all of these passages of Scripture, you will find that Jesus cares about people. And he was always saying to the disciples, how are they doing? You feed them. This guy needs to have demons cast out of him. These people need this. All the way through all his ministry, it was people. All the way. So one of the things I look at as far as stewardship is concerned is that it starts with knowing what is precious. The people you have around you are what is precious. It's not the money you have in the bank. It's not any of these other things that you have that you think are important. It's the people. That's where you're supposed to start. So who do you say Jesus is? Do you practice the stewardship of listening to him? The practice of knowing that it's the people he cares about. Lord, I pray that each one of us cares about our souls, cares about our relationship with you, that we care about the people that are